going on the this way. Alexa, some of you guys got a little body armor on. Let's see what they got over here. See how that works out. Check out my YouTube channel for a minute, see if you can get a feedback on it. While you're at it, hit the like too. So while you're at it, hit the like too. See how that works out. Check out my YouTube channel for a minute, see if you can get a feedback on it. While you're at it, hit the like too. So while you're at it, I realize I have a guy dead in the meat locker. See how that works out. Check out my YouTube channel for a minute, see if you can get a feedback on it. So you hear me twice?
Yeah.
Really?
It's
I realize I have a guy dead in the meat locker. What the fuck? So you hear me twice?
Yeah.
Really?
It's
I realize I have a guy dead in the meat locker. What the fuck? So you hear me twice?
Yeah.
Really? I
It's
realize I have a guy dead in the meat locker. What the fuck? See how that works out. See how that works out. You still hear me twice? Give it a minute. See how that works out. You still hear me twice? Give it a minute. You still hear me twice? Give it a minute. Right here's one map. You still hear me twice? Give it a minute. Now turn off the audio. Damn. Right here's one map. I got it where you don't share the audio through the chat, so I don't understand why it's coming up on that twice. Unless... Give it a minute. The filter is not showing up anything. Turn off the audio. Damn. Right here's one map. I got it where you don't share the audio through the chat, so I don't understand why it's coming up on that twice. Unless... So you said the audio finally came up, right? You hear people bitching in the background? The filter is not showing up anything. I said, did you hear the people bitching in the background? I got it where you don't share the audio through the chat, so I don't understand why it's coming up on that twice. Unless... So you said the audio finally came up, right? I have the microphone. You heard people bitching in the background? The filter is not showing up anything. I said, did you hear the people bitching in the background? Alright. I got it where you don't share the audio through the chat, so I don't understand why it's coming up on that twice. So you said the audio finally came up. Can you hear me now? And did you hear the people bitching in the background? No, it's gonna have like a 5-10 minute lag on it. Can you hear me now? Can you hear the people thinking in the background? No, it's gonna have like a 5-10 minute lag on it. Can you hear me now? Yeah, I hear it. I'm just trying to figure this out. Where's the sound coming from? If I take a microphone. No, it's gonna have like a 5-10 minute lag on it. Can you hear me now? Yeah, I hear it. I'm just trying to figure this out. Where's the sound coming from? If I take a microphone. No, it's gonna have like a 5-10 minute lag on it. Can you hear me now? Yeah, we're really trying to figure this shit out. What the fuck? My guy just got ran over by an AI out of nowhere. What the fuck? Yeah, I hear it. I'm just trying to figure this out. Stop this guy. Stop! Where's the sound coming from? If I take a microphone. No, it's gonna have like a 5-10 minute lag on it. Can you hear me now? Yeah, we're really trying to figure this shit out. What the fuck? My guy just got ran over by an AI out of nowhere. I don't know what happens to that cop. He just came out of nowhere. What the fuck? Yeah, I hear it. I'm just trying to figure this out. Stop this guy. Stop! Where's the sound coming from? If I take a microphone. No, it's gonna have like a 5-10 minute lag on it. Can you hear me now? Yeah, we're really trying to figure this shit out. What the fuck? My guy just got ran over by an AI out of nowhere. I don't know what happens to that cop. He just came out of nowhere. What the fuck? Yeah, I hear it. I'm just trying to figure this out. Stop this guy. Stop! Where's the sound coming from? If I take a microphone. No, it's gonna have like a 5-10 minute lag. Oh, what the fuck? Can you hear me now? Yeah, we're really trying to figure this shit out. What the fuck? My guy just got ran over by an AI out of nowhere. I don't know what happens to that cop. He just came out of nowhere. Yeah, I hear it. I'm just trying to figure this out. Stop this guy. Stop! Where's the sound coming from? If I take a microphone. No, it's gonna have like a 5-10 minute lag. Oh, what the fuck? Can you hear me now? Yeah, we're really trying to figure this shit out. What the fuck? My guy just got ran over by an AI out of nowhere. I don't know what happens to that cop. He just came out of nowhere. Yeah, I hear it. I'm just trying to figure this out. Stop this guy. Stop! Where's the sound coming from? If I take a microphone. No, it's gonna have like a 5-10 minute lag. Oh, what the fuck? Can you hear me now? Yeah, we're really trying to figure this shit out. What the fuck? My guy just got ran over by an AI out of nowhere. I don't know what happens to that cop. He just came out of nowhere. Yeah, I hear it. I'm just trying to figure this out. Stop this guy. Stop! Where's the sound coming from? If I take a microphone. No, it's gonna have like a 5-10 minute lag. Oh, what the fuck? Can you hear me now? Yeah. Hey, can you hear me? Hey, can you hear me? Yeah, but I still don't hear the game. Hey, can you hear me? Yeah, I know. I got like fucking 4 different microphones here. I don't know why. I still don't hear the game. Hey, can you hear me? Yeah, I know. I know. 4 different microphones here. I don't know why. I still don't hear the game. Output. I know. Damn thing's still doing it. Oh, shit. I wonder. That's only gonna be on PlayStation. Probably they don't hear multiple people talking on the PlayStation at the same time. They're always by themselves and they got everything disconnected. 1 hour would be to disconnect that microphone for a minute. Find out where it's at. That one, that's a camera. That's not it, is it? No, that's my mouse. That's my keyboard. Where is my microphone plugged into? thought. No, not more, but a couple days ago, not really angry, but really trying to go. You hear me? You thought. No, not more, but a couple days ago, not really angry, but really trying to go. You hear me? You thought. No, not more, but a couple days ago, not really angry, but really trying to go. You hear me?
This is
A really good looking stream or recording is meaningless if the audio sucks. In this episode, we'll cover how to best set up OBS Studio's mixer to balance your various sources and produce a high quality recording or live stream and be a mixer master. Any high-tier live production needs a variety of scenes to show and quick, precise switching between them. The Elgato Stream Deck gives you 15 keys with customizable LCD screens behind each one. They can execute macros, application launchers, and do scene switching and source muting for OBS, and you can nest folders for more actions and unlimited power. That wouldn't be set up right is the mixer. You look at it, there are green bars bouncing around, it's working, right? For a great live streaming experience, or even a recording that just isn't trashed, learning and utilizing the mixer in OBS Studio is super important. Let's start with the basics of how it works. The mixer panel itself contains audio bars for the different audio sources in a given scene. This does include the microphone and desktop audio devices selected in your audio settings, as well as any specific sources in a scene that also provide audio. For example, if you add a capture card for capturing console gameplay to a scene, a volume bar for that capture card's audio input will also show up. Audio sources are listed by the name of the source, either the kind of source added, or desktop audio device, desktop audio device 2, mix/aux, or mic/aux, etc. The green bar below the audio source name indicates the current level or volume that the audio is at. You want it to be somewhere close to 75% of the way towards the right. If it stays all the way towards the right, you'll be clipping or peaking, and your audio will be very overwhelming or distorted. Too far to the left, and it will be hard to hear you. You can use the blue slider to adjust the volume of a source. You'll want to do this to lower the level of game sound or background music so that it doesn't overpower your voice. You want your voice to be clearly heard over all other sound, but for the background sound to still be heard as well. These slider adjustments are reflected in the number on the far right, measured in decibels. Keep in mind, this is not a measurement of your audio levels, simply how much you have reduced the input. Where your sliders should be will vary based on your setup, but for full volume inputs, I usually knock my gain sound and background music to around -6 to -7 dB. The most important rule to keep in mind here is to do many test recordings to make sure things are set. Up correctly. I get asked all the time, how do I make sure volume levels are right before I stream? Do a test recording. Every time you change something, do a test recording and play it back to see how it sounds. Every time. Do it. You can click the speaker icon to mute any sources that you're not using. For example, if you add a webcam as a face cam, you don't want the webcam microphone echoing around if you have a good mic set up. So you can mute out the webcam audio and not have to worry about it. If you click the gear icon next to a specific audio source, you can click Filters and add one of the available audio filters to a source. This will generally apply to your microphone. You can add more gain if your microphone is just way too quiet. You can add noise suppression or a noise gate to help reduce background noise from your microphone. This can wind up sounding pretty obnoxious for the viewer, as when the noise gate activates and deactivates, it makes an annoying noise like a click or a pop. But you can do some testing for yourself and see if you like it. You can also add a compressor to help your mic sound better and more even. Lastly, you can also add a VST plugin to your audio sources. You can find plenty of of these for free online, which can provide awesome fun effects that you might want to play around with. There's a very important part of the mixer that's easy to miss.
What's going on, everyone? John from Hobbyist PCs here. Today, we're going to be going over the various settings within OBS as it pertains to your audio settings. We'll be going through the various settings that are within the menu, the settings menu itself, just to kind of get you acquainted with what everything does in there. When you're getting OBS set up for the first time, you got to make sure that these settings are set up correctly. Otherwise, you might run into some various problems with OBS or when you're trying to go live. These are very much just basic settings, so there isn't anything crazy going on in this tutorial, just a basic rundown. But at the very least, if you have any questions about any of these particular settings, if I didn't go over any particular details, feel free to ask me down in the comments below and I'll do my best to try to answer and explain it for you. All right, why don't we just go ahead and get right into it. So here we are, we're at the OBS window. Of course, your layout might look a little different than what you see here. I've got my stats window over on the right-hand side. This is what I use to keep track of everything going on the stream and how the encoder is handling everything. But the main thing we're focused on here today is the settings menu. In the lower right-hand corner, you will see the settings button if you're in OBS Studio or OBS Live. And we're going to go ahead and click on that. We're going to get brought to this menu here, and we want to head over first to the audio section. Now here at the audio section, you're going to see various things. You may or may not know what any of this does, but for those who don't know, I'm going to go run down every single one of these so that you understand what they are and what they do. We're going to start at the very top. You've got your sample rate. Now, your sample rate is something that's going to depend on your own actual sample rate. The sample rate is essentially the resolution of the audio being captured. There are a lot of people in the audio community that tend to consider bit depth, 24-bit, 16-bit as resolution. Personally, I see sample rate more as resolution because the higher the sample rate, the more pictures of the audio of the original source is being taken. Therefore, the file sizes get bigger, almost kind of similar to what you would see with the resolution on a screen. The higher the res, the more detail. Therefore, the higher the sample rate, the more detail you will hear in the audio. So you're instantly probably thinking, I should set this as high as I can. Not necessarily. You do have to find out what your sample rate is on your sound card, and you should try to match those up accordingly. Otherwise, you might run into issues where your audio plays back slow or fast. I'll have a later video explaining Windows settings actually right after this one, so just wait up for the next video and I'll explain Windows settings so you can find out what your sample rate is and you can set that accordingly. For me, myself, I have 48 kilohertz, therefore I will set it to 48 kilohertz. The next one is channels. You'll have a choice between mono, stereo, 2.1, 4.0. Basically, for most of you, you're going to want to set this to stereo. Unless you're capturing like surround sound, which the channels will be right here. 2.1, 4.0, 4.1. These are all surround sound type of channels. Mono, on the other hand, is just one source. So it's basically the equivalent to having all your sound go through one speaker. Whereas stereo is sound going through both speakers, or in this case, headphones. This is why you typically might want to set this to stereo. Most people are going to be listening with stereo, so I recommend that you just set this to stereo and leave it alone. Next, we're going to get to the devices section. This is the part that you kind of have to know what your sources are going to be as far as like your microphone or whatever your main desktop device is going to be. Now, most people generally can set your desktop audio and your mic audio to default. However, sometimes with certain updates on Windows, defaults can change around. Windows likes to take liberties sometimes, and it just, I don't know why they do it. But to kind of prevent that issue, you can typically just identify the device that you're going to be using, and to just guarantee that that device is what's going to be used for your stream, just set it to that. Now, in this case, you've noticed that on mine, I've got my desktop audio set to default and my desktop audio 2 set to Focusrite USB. Now, I'm normally using the Focusrite USB as my main device to listen to my audio. That's what my headphones are plugged into right now. This might change for you guys. You guys might have a different sound card. Usually it's called Realtek or whatever your headphones are called. That's what you're probably going to end up using. But in this case, I had issues with Discord. And from what I saw in a forum post somewhere, some people were able to get the Discord audio to come through by setting their first device to default and then setting their second desktop audio to Focusrite USB. I don't understand the logic behind it, but apparently it works for some people and it worked for me. I'm not saying you need to do this. I suggest that you try setting it to your device on the first one, and if that works, leave it alone. As for the mic auxiliary, you can choose up to 4 different devices to capture, which is fantastic. So if you have multiple sources that you're capturing audio from, this is going to work out for you. But for most of us streamers, we usually have just one mic source. So what you're going to want to do is use whatever device is handling the recording side of things and select the mic auxiliary device. In my case, it's the Focusrite USB device. And like I said, you can basically just add as many sources as you like. If you use a program like Voicemeeter, this is incredibly useful for that. But like I said, for most of us, probably just going to end up using one. Now we're down to the meters section. If you look down below in the audio mixer down here, you'll see that there's that meter bouncing up and down. This is what's called a decibel meter, or what some might call a dB meter. dB is just short for decibels, and decibels is the unit of measurement that's used to measure perceived volume. Basically, the higher the decibels are, the louder it is. What this meters section does is it allows you to control how that meter works. If you change it, you can change it to go fast, medium, or slow. I can change it to medium, and you'll see that it kind of like bounces down a little slower. Go to slow, and it'll bounce down even slower. Let's click apply. There you can see that the meter comes down really slow when I set it to that. Personally, I like to set it to fast because I like to make sure that I'm getting as accurate a reading as possible. That's just a preference of mine. But you can typically use this meter to try to tell you what levels your audio is at, and then you can make adjustments without having to listen, because most of the time you're not going to be able to listen to your audio while you're streaming. So sometimes you could just use that as an indicator as to where your audio is sitting. As for the peak meter type, I personally recommend just keeping it at sample peak. This is whatever the sample is set at. Then you get the true peak. It says higher CPU usage for some of you who want to keep your stream lightweight. I recommend not using it. But if you need to figure out what the true peak is for your actual sound source, then you can go ahead and set this on. I suggest using it not while you're on stream. Use it while you're in the setup process. And then while you're live on stream, I recommend setting it to sample peak. Then we got the monitoring device. This is something that most of you probably won't use. But if you're in a situation where you're able to monitor your stream through a different source, this can be incredibly useful, because within OBS, you can actually go and you can select a way to actually go in and listen to what your mic audio is doing. It'll actually play it back for you. That way you can hear what you sound like, and you can make changes to the sound however you need to. And that's basically what this lets you do. This lets you go in and choose which devices are going to be used to monitor your audio. This can also be pretty useful for people who do console streaming. There are some ways that you can use the monitoring device itself to help you hear the gameplay audio. But for most of us probably aren't going to use this. We're probably just going to use the default device anyway. So for most of us, I recommend just setting it to default unless you're in a specific situation where you might need to change it. And as for this little checkbox down here, disable Windows audio ducking, it's something that I personally recommend that you turn on no matter what. Windows has this thing where it has like attenuation built into it, and what it sometimes ends up doing is that for some of your sources within Windows, it'll actually gradually bring the audio down inside Windows over time. And then next thing you know, like, you're not hearing any audio. Like, I see this with Discord a lot, for example, where just the audio will just drop all the way down to like almost zero. And everyone's like on stream, oh, I can't hear your Discord audio. And then you go back and you look and you see it in your mixer that your volume went all the way down. This can sometimes help that issue. Sometimes you got to go into the Windows settings itself to handle that. But in this case, I suggest just turning it on. And for the last section right down here, we got hotkeys. If you are using push to mute, or if you're using push to talk within OBS, this is where you would go to try to set your delays for your push to talk. Personally, I like to make sure that like my push to talk delay is like, you know, as short as possible. So I don't have to worry so much about my sentences getting cut off too early or anything like that. This is something that if you do use push to talk or push to mute, I highly suggest that you play around with this, see what you get good, and just just make sure that you're not cutting off your sentences too early or too late when you set these. And lastly, we're going to cover a couple of other sections that are actually under the output section. Now, first of all, under the streaming tab, you're going to notice a section called audio track. Now, this is going to exist in both streaming and recording, but you'll notice that under the recording tab, there is audio tracks, but they're checkboxes, whereas in streaming, you only get to choose one. That's because when you're streaming to any sort of service, they only allow for you to choose one stereo track. You cannot stream multiple tracks at the same time. Even though you can mix your various sources within your mixer, you can't handle sources separately. The stream only allows for one stereo track. Therefore, you have to choose which track you're going to use to handle your stream audio for your encoding. Whereas in the recording section, you can record video with multiple tracks on it. And this is especially useful, for example, if you have separate sources for, let's say, your Discord audio, your gameplay, and your microphone. Once you capture that audio, you can then send it into a video editor, and you can level off all the different tracks separately. That way you can get a nice mix afterwards in case the mix wasn't that good going in to begin with. You can also do things like in case someone in your chat says something that might not be friendly with TOS, for example, you can go ahead and you can cut that out. You can select up to 6 different tracks when you're on recording mode, which is useful if you have that many tracks that you want to separate. And you can go into the advanced mixer settings, which I will show you in another video. And you can set which tracks in your mixer are going to which track on the recording section. And lastly, I want to go over one more thing. We get the audio section here. By the way, I want to note something really quick that I almost forgot about. You'll notice that I am in advanced mode. If I set it to simple, all these settings change. You don't even get to change all these things. So keep in mind that all these settings that you're seeing right here are under advanced mode. But that's what we do here. We're going to be doing things in advanced mode. You want to learn OBS and get the best audio, this is how you should approach it. But now you can see here that we got our 6 different tracks that we saw in the recording section and in the streaming section. You are able to assign different bit rates to each track. Now, if you're just going to be streaming, it's not that important to have the bit rate set as high as possible. As a matter of fact, you can probably just set it to 160 and call it a day. Most streaming services only accept up to 160. The higher the bit rate, the higher the quality. This is basically a compression algorithm. The audio is recorded and then it's compressed as it's sent out to the streaming service, or